Hi, everyone. This is Charles Hoskinson broadcasting live from warm, sunny Colorado. So I have a very simple unwritten rule that shall now be written. Whenever Doge goes up 500% in a day, I'm going to do some sort of Doge Special episode. I'm not sure what we're going to talk about. I'm not sure what we're going to do, but this is the Doge Special. Congratulations. They may actually be number 6, although I don't think they'll hold it for long. It's still a lot of fun. The markets, they get hammered all the time, and the stock markets are kind of fun. These investor groups got together and they said, hey, we're just going to go kind of troll Wall Street and buy, a video game resellers, stocks, GameStop, and then go and buy AMC theaters and whatever the hell else we want. And now let's go do Dogecoin because that's the most trolly of all the coins. And then Wall Street shows up and they say, oh, how dare you do that? You're not allowed to do that. We're short selling. This is crazy. And then I just found out that it looks like Robinhood got a direct communique from the White House and from the Securities Exchange Commission and other actors to stop trading in these stocks. And of course, for our industry, this is Tuesday. We're used to this stuff. Dogecoin is a great example of that. It goes way up, goes way down. It's ain't no thing. Wall Street is not used to these things at all. So it tells you who's going to win in the future. But I did figure, fuck it, why not? I was just about to go to bed, and how many times do you see surges like this? So I figured I'd just do like an informal, impromptu AMA. So it'll be a little loopy. I don't know how long I'll last. I'm exhausted, maybe 20, 30 minutes. But let's see if we can have some fun together and enjoy Doge together. It is a little depressing, though. You spend all these years building systematically, being very serious, writing academic papers, and a coin that's literally a copy of Bitcoin with no founder left and no technology and no nothing. It just goes to the goddamn moon, and you're just looking at it and you're saying to yourself, oh, welcome to crypto. But, you have to find humor in the whole thing. Okay. But of course, we'll be around in 5 years. And they'll be around in 5 years getting pumped by Reddit. Okay, let's take a look at what you guys have. From James Dean. Sup, Charles? You look cleaned up. Yeah, I got a haircut, shaved a little bit. It's amazing how many years that takes off of you. Wait, there was a communique from the White House? Yeah, that was the rumor that I heard, that some members of the White House and the SEC reached out to Robinhood and told them to delist or stop trading of certain stocks to kind of calm them down a little bit. And Robinhood has a financial connection to the people who were on the short side of those stocks. So there should be an investigation. At least that's what I heard. It might not be true, but it's hard to know these days what's true or not. I just know at least one congressman has sent a letter to the SEC asking for, or the DOJ, can't remember which one, asking for an investigation. And I've seen a lot of things percolating around the channels. How sustainable is this Doge pump? It's not sustainable at all. It'll collapse. There's nothing intrinsically valuable about it, just like there's nothing intrinsically valuable about the GameSpot stock. Just went way, 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 way up. And it's going to go way, 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 way down when fundamentals return. Yeah, so this is a good point. It says, hey, Charles, they say in stocks and cryptos, every gain we make is somebody else's loss. Is this true? It really bothers me. Well, not necessarily. There is a notion of value creation. Hang on. Let me use my hand to reset focus. There is a notion of value creation, and it is entirely possible for stocks to gain real legitimate value over time, and wealth creation to occur as markets expand. But there also are some zero realities with these things. In the case of rapid trading and short selling and these types of things, it's absolutely some zero. And a lot of retail investors are going to get hurt. And if they're willing to lose their money, then it's all fun and games. But if they're thinking they actually can make money, you're going to lose. The smart money's already out. Doge number 7 on market cap. Yeah, that's entirely possible. It could be good, become number 3 by the end of the week if this trend continues. It's also entirely possible to collapse 80%. This is a great point. When hedge fund billionaires move markets, they get huge bonuses. But when ordinary Americans move markets, they get shut down by Wall Street. System is rigged. Absolutely. System doesn't like competition, and the system is rigged against the little guy. That's why we build cryptocurrencies, and that's why we build alternative markets. I firmly believe there is no way to win through regulation or the ballot box. It's only going to be through competition. We need to build new markets, new products, and if they don't work in America, offshore them and make them go to Africa and Asia and other places and outgrow them. Because once someone's rich and powerful, they're never going to give that up unless you take it from them or outgrow them. Yeah, well, this isn't exactly capitalism. When you say things like capitalism rocks, America does not live in a capitalist system. So when your AOC crowd comes out and they say capitalism is evil, we live in cronyism. It's where the government and companies, large companies, get together and the companies hack the government to create marketplaces where large companies always win as an oligarchy against smaller companies. And every now and then these small companies can break through, and they're very rare, 90% or more fail. And the ones that break through get invited into the oligarchy and they get co-opted and corrupted. So that's not capitalism. It's not a free market when regulation protects the big and powerful and creates anti-competitive realities and cartels are allowed to exist. Where will you move to if the United States tries to tax us more than 80% on gains? I'm not going to move. I don't care if the taxes are 100%. It's my home. America is my home. Where would I go? What would I do? I'm not going to be a refugee. I'd only leave if there was a civil war and there was nothing left of this country, but I'd probably fight in it if it occurred. You don't leave your home. You try to stay if you can, and you try to make it better if you can. And the war is not lost. Yeah, taxes go up and crazy socialists get power from time to time. Crazy fascists get power from time to time. And the system is built in a way that it has enough checks and balances that I believe it can survive. Mary hard fork event. It's HFC, hard fork combinator. It has a tentative date. If so, when? Yes, tentatively February 22nd. No comment. Macho Man Randy Savage, one of my favorite wrestlers. You might not like it, but you better believe it. When multi-asset, refer to my prior comments. Let's keep going through. Chiefs or the Bucks in the Super Bowl? Well, I don't watch football anymore. I watch Tom Brady because he's grandfathered in. But after Brady retires, that's the last link I have to American football. After all the politics invaded football and everything got so crazy, I just lost all interest, and I don't really care anymore about it. You know, it used to be very passionate. I knew everything about everybody. I knew all the statistics, and I loved the sport, and it was something my dad and I were deeply connected with. But not anymore. I just don't care. That said, I like Brady, and I think he is the greatest of all time, and I'll never bet against him. And I really enjoy watching him play. But he's 43. His time in the NFL is coming to an end. Not this year, then next year, but at some point soon. He's gone. And after that, there's nothing I care about anymore in football. So I hope for the Bucs. As a former Broncos fan, I'll never root for Kansas City. This is a good one. Twitter and Cardano when? Singularity Net and Cardano when? Thanks. We are right now looking at forming a working group, and we've had some discussions with a lot of CEOs and a lot of different social networks about exploring, just like Jack Dorsey with Blue Sky is exploring how to build an actual useful decentralized social network. Now, I outlined a collection of requirements that I feel are necessary for that network to be useful. First, the network has to actually solve the underlying problem of information flow and curation and radicalization. So right now, information does not flow properly and is not curated properly. We live in silos in social networks. So this is the most fundamental problem. And those silos basically become self-reinforcing feedback loops that radicalize people and make everybody succumb to confirmation bias. And they don't even subjectively separate people. They make people actually live in objectively different realities. They cannot agree on basic facts anymore. One side thinks one side won an election, the other side thinks another side won an election. There's no agreement there. And that's an example of an existential division that if it exacerbates, it becomes problematic. So the first characteristic of a good social network is one that balances perspectives and information and allows people to agree on common facts and understandings, even if their values are different about that. For example, we can have a discussion about how many people in the United States don't have health care, but still not have that immediately follow that everybody must be a supporter of universal health care, where universal health care is defined as total government control over all health care. We can entertain other ideas, and we can also have common values where it is morally right for as many people in the United States to have health care as possible. So the world is nuanced and there's a lot of complexity there, and you have to be able to discuss issues and agree on baseline facts. And then you can argue about values and try to understand why people have values the way they are. So the first characteristic is you need information flow, proper information curation, and the ability for people to converge towards a nuanced middle as opposed to radical silos. The second criteria is you need incentives for the curation of information and incentives for participation in content creation. Hive and Bats and Steam are all examples of where partial solutions exist, and you actually have a more meaningful way of having advertisement and micro-targeting without surveillance capitalism and the fundamental preservation of privacy. And then finally, the infrastructure of a social network is much more cumbersome than a cryptocurrency. 4K video. I mean, just this video stream alone, if I go on for an hour, will be about a gigabyte. There are millions of these every day, and a lot of pictures and a lot of social interactions. Even a small clique can have 1 million or 2 million interactions over a period of a month. And so that computation, network, and data resource is so incredibly expensive that normally there's an economy of scale there. So new protocols and algorithms need to be invented. So these are kind of the baseline three components. You need to have a sustainable closed economy where there's a demand for the token, there's a demand to acquire the token, and you use the token to incentivize things. You need to have de-radicalization and proper information flow, and you need to have proper infrastructure subsidy. And if you can achieve these three things, then I think a decentralized social network makes a lot of sense, because Twitter and Facebook and LinkedIn can still exist. They're the interface. The protocol is the information layer. It's the river. They're the boats. So under that understanding, you can still have moderation. You can still have a notion of deplatforming in very different ways than the way it's done before. And no one corporation or cabal of companies has the ability to destroy people, to remove them from the river. Everybody has equal access and fair and free access to the flow of information. So we'll probably write an open letter if we can put a coalition together and talk about these basic principles and things that can be done. And as with all things we do, it's probably going to be a research project, but it's not something that I'm doing actively right now. But I am having some meetings about it because the deplatforming of things like Parler is honestly one step removed from the deplatforming of our industry. And if we lose the war there, then we're the very next target, our industry, because all they have to do is say that cryptocurrencies are used to fund hate speech. And if they're deplatforming one, they'll deplatform the other. There's no stopping there. You need a backstop. Charles, do you want to give your side of the story on what happened to Jessica 1? I don't know Jessica. I'm not sure. You'll have to be more specific. You must know something I don't know. Or there must have been a news item that I haven't heard yet. It's a bizarre question. Do you consider staking rewards to be a form of revenue that can be used for personal transactions? It is compensation for labor performed, just like mining is compensation for labor performed. The people who stake are operating the network, and that provides value collectively to the entire network. So the network is paying those people to basically do that. And the only currency the network has to do so is ADA. And ADA has real life value, so it's a reward. And of course it's revenue, and there's of course a tax event associated with it. You're not guaranteed ADA. You're participating in a process, and you have to do work to get it. Do you change your own oil? No, I have cars that are really, really hard to do that. Maybe the trucks I could, but time is finite, and the more computerized and complex things, that whole right to repair starts evaporating pretty quickly. How's the wet year going, sir? Favorite whiskey? Mine is Crown XR right now. Thoughts? Well, I love Hibiki, and I like Glenmorangie, and there's a bunch of different whiskeys I like, but I haven't drank anything yet. I haven't had time or desire. Thoughts on bison trails? We definitely work with them. We have a good relationship with them, and my hope is over the coming few quarters that we can tighten that up and accomplish great things with them. To Pen C, have you talked about RISC-V? Will that improve InfoSec? Simplicity is the ultimate elegance, and RISC-V is a very interesting hardware innovation. It's an open source instruction set with open source processors that are being built to follow that instruction set. And it's the first time in computer history we've had an instruction of that level since the introduction of ARM and x86, those wars. So it's a really cool thing. And I think x86, the whole Intel set of things, the CISC is too complex. And RISC makes a lot of sense. And to have an open, very simple instruction set for the entire IoT side of things, trusted hardware, these other things, makes a lot of sense to build on top of that as a basis. and I wish them well. I hope that they keep scaling up. Who drew those paintings in your room? They were done by children with crayons. Charles, do you have a brother? If so, is he as smart as you? Oh, he's smarter. He's a brilliant doctor. He's up in Wyoming. He's an internist. He went into the family business, and I was the rebel. How to read scientific papers? Well, it depends on the field of science that you're in, but for computer science papers, they usually start the same way. They have an abstract, an introduction, there's a body, and then there's a conclusion. So you read the abstract, you read the introduction, you read the conclusion first. Okay, that's the starting point. And then what you try to do when you look through the body is get a sense of the major results of the paper. And there's going to be the stuff you get, and then there's going to be the stuff you get, but the explanation of why it's true is really, really hard. And then there's the stuff you just don't get. So you try to at least parse the stuff you get first, and that hopefully is a big chunk of that. And then you think real deeply, does that conclusion follow? And then once you're good, you go back to the stuff you don't get, and you try to parse that and try to fit it into some sort of knowledge graph. And in many cases, really technical papers may be a bit too difficult. And what you'll have to do is regress back to the citations and go to the foundational papers. So if you find something with lots of VDFs and VRFs and all these other things, you probably read those foundational papers first before you can really tackle that. And these concepts may take some time. This is especially true when you look at really, really specialized things like zero-knowledge cryptography. Now, the proofs, even amongst professionals, some people just take them for granted. And that's a big problem in mathematics in particular. There's a proof by authority that goes around where well, that guy's got a Fields Medal, so he's probably doing it right. And if you actually want to validate a proof, it's a lot of work, especially for domain-specific papers that are very deep. Things can go on and on. Like we're writing this treasury paper, for example, and that paper is for large-scale private treasuries for Catalyst and Cardano. I think there's like 4 or 5 pages of just solid symbols and math. It's a lot to go through. Bin Sheng is a genius. He's a very, very smart guy. So to actually go through that whole thing and convince yourself it's true and read the proofs carefully, amongst experts would take days to weeks. And amongst amateurs, it may not even be possible, given massive sums of time. So that's the hard part of these things. But following the conclusion and trying to understand the significance of it, you should always ask, why should I care? Why should I care? And always be trying to have a syntopical understanding of where does this fit in my knowledge graph and why is this relevant? Hi, Charles. And thoughts or updates on Q Adidas? Didn't spell it right, but that's okay. We're going to change the name. We're working on it, and I will make an announcement at a later date. We invited Kevin Buzzard in to talk about lean, and we're looking at a lot of different languages, and we've circulated this amongst many people. Big fan of Automath and Mizar. Big fan of the QED manifesto back in the 90s. I'm not quite a constructivist. That whole law of excluded middle thing, I'm still in love with it. And I haven't been pushed so far. One of these days I'll be stark raving mad talking about rational trigonometry and ultra finitism, and then that's when you should probably move on from Charles. But we are definitely moving in that direction. It's going to be a very fun project to pursue. How do you get into a state of deep focus when working on something? If it's extremely important, I use an isolation tank. So what you do is you sit in an isolation tank for about 90 minutes. And if you're particularly distracted that day, the first 20 to 30 minutes are absolute hell. And then at some point, your body and mind will calm down, and then you'll get into a state where you're prepared for deep focus. When you leave the tank, shower off and don't go into a digital environment at all. Go into a silent room with no digital devices and whatever you want to do deep work on, and it's there. If you find that you still can't do that, then the next step is to go on a fast. And then after you've fasted for a few days, then go into an isolation tank. Those two things together almost certainly get you into deep work mode. It's hard. The world is engineered to erode that, and it's exceedingly difficult to get it back. Do you meditate? Yes, I use a variety of techniques and methods. I think the best way to get into the meditation space is to use the Calm app. What's formal verification tooling look like for Plutus, Marlowe, and Yella? Oh man, I have had 4.5 hours of meetings this week, specifically on the spec languages. There's a lot of stuff. I've even emailed Leslie Lamport. There's so many things that are going on right now. I can't quite talk about it yet, but I think we can make an announcement soon about something we're working on. I think is not only good for us, but for the entire industry as it relates to specifications and formal verification. Thoughts on Andrew Yang? He's an example of a Democrat I like. I don't like many of them, and I don't like many Republicans. The point is he shows up to the table, and he says facts. And he brings ideas based on his values on how to resolve the problems that those facts imply, explicitly and implicitly. Now, I disagree in many cases with the solutions that he's proposing, but I could have a conversation with him. He was the only Democrat who had the courage to sit down with Ben Shapiro and have a conversation with him. All the other ones were running around saying, how dare you even consider it, and normalize that racist, sexist, homophobe, bigot, evil person. And that's the problem. We have political parties that not only aren't listening and talking to each other, they're socially criminalizing the mere act of talking to each other by this word of normalizing. So Yang is part of the solution. I don't think he has all the solutions, but at least he's in the right direction. And we need more of him and Tulsi and others, and much, much, much less of AOC, and much less of Trump, and much less of these incredible partisan divisions we have. Would you move to Texas? No, no, no. I love Texas and great people, great barbecue, but I'm a Coloradan. And if I ever moved anywhere, I'd move Wyoming. That's about it. I love this. The Crimea River. Tell us the plan to charge poor Ethiopian farmers 15% APY loans. Well, if you provide somebody the means to double or triple their income, is it unreasonable then to take a small percentage relative to the total amount? When you get a car loan, you have a car, is that truly something you need, or is it a luxury? Maybe it is, maybe it isn't. But if it is truly something you need, do you need a Mustang, or can you get by with a used Yaris? When they get a fertilizer voucher, by doing so, they could double or triple their output of a farm. And yet you're saying that people take enormous risk in providing that can't get compensated for this. It's always got to be charity, which means no markets can form because none of the profit is sustainable. And if markets can't form, you will never have growth of wealth. Everyone stays poor. Read a fucking economics textbook. Would you go back to Hawaii? Well, I was born in Maui, and I lived in a little town called Makawa. And there's actually a ranch out there that I'm thinking about buying, the Paholo Ranch. It's right nearby where I grew up, and I used to slide down the hills there. It's right on the base of Haleakala on cardboard. But I could imagine living there part-time during the winter, but it's just so far removed from everything. And I'm so in the arena, I don't think I could live there permanently. Do you believe in caloric restriction and life extension? I actually have a member of the ADA community I'm going to go spend some time with. He's based in Florida, specifically on life extension. And I'll do a special edition talk about it. It's first week of February. All right, well, what's your question about ADA? Why doesn't he answer questions about ADA? I asked him about ADA. No, you don't see. You haven't asked an ADA question. Come on now. Come on now. You got this, son. You got this. Any videos do you recommend for new people in the space? Yeah, 2 entry points. Gensler's the current chairman of the Securities Exchange Commission's 20 courses that he did at MIT on cryptocurrencies. Quite good. The other recommendation is the Princeton course on Bitcoin in Coursera. Both of them are free, and both of them would give you a tremendous understanding of the industry as a whole. And then you'll have a sufficient foundation to kind of get to the next level. What did the bird that landed on your shoulder tell you about February? Charles seems like he only played humans in WoW. I got news for you. I never even played WoW. To this day, I've never played the game. Not once. Charles embraced the bald head, shaved the rest. It's going to go in one direction or the other, and I'm just trying to decide, is medical science good enough to make it go in the desirable direction? If not, then I'm going to go in the Bezos direction. You guys will obviously know the end result. Is Craig right, Satoshi? No. It was like Tywin Lannister. Any man who needs to say he is the king is no king. Any man who needs to say he is Satoshi is no Satoshi. Are you going to tend bees on your ranch? Okay, pop quiz. What is beekeeping called? Do you guys know what it is? It's called apiculture. No, not right now, but at some point in the future I will. Actually, Ethiopia has a thriving bee population that keeps expanding, and they use it to make alcohol, amongst many other things. When will you fight Chico? Who? Who? Is there Chico? Fuck is that guy? Do you eat fruit? Yeah, I love star fruit. Grew up with that. It's amazing. But I have a very diverse palate, so I enjoy many of them. Jedi or Sith? Neither. They need to be together and balanced. How's the new mattress? Yeah, I bought an IntelliBed. I got roped into that. I got an IntelliBed Midnight, and it's got this crazy IntelliBed gel foam. It's like purple done right. And I got to admit, it's a weird feeling. It's both hard and soft at the same time, but I can sleep on my back, on my side, and feels great. It's actually an incredible mattress. 500 pounds. Like 6 people carry the damn thing in. But highly recommend the bed. You know, no matter how rich or poor you are, spend a lot of money on a bed. You spend 8 hours plus a day on the thing, 56 hours a week if you're getting a normal night's sleep. Even if you're getting shit sleep, you're still probably spending more than 40 hours a week on it. And most people won't spend more than $1,000 or $2,000. I don't have the money. Buy it on payments then. That's the one thing that makes a lot of sense. You can do so much more in life when you're well rested than when you're tired. When you're tired, it's like drinking on the job. You're at a huge disadvantage. Firm, medium, firm, or plush. I used to always be a plush guy, but now I'm man soft. I was going to say something for the tape, but we'll keep it PG. Looking good, Charles. Yeah, well, I just need to lose 30 pounds and get back in shape. Outside of that, great. Which infinity stone is my favorite? Well, I mean, the time stone is probably the most useful, but the reality stone is pretty cool too. It was undervalued. I still don't know what the hell the spirit stone does. Bring people back to life? I don't fucking know. You know, this is an interesting one. Mage, tank, melee, range, support, healer. Healer mage is really just the best role ever. Healer because you're everybody's friends, and then mage because you can do something. Even support mage, and usually you can multi-class. But if I had to pick any of them, the healer is the way to go. Because think of it this way: if you actually lived in that world, you know, like a RPG medieval setting, do you want to be the guy that if he gets a shaving cut can die of an infection, or the guy who has the power to heal any wound and raise the dead? Also, if you wanted to make real money, wouldn't you want to be the guy who has the ability to heal wounds, because everybody would come to you as a miracle healer and pay you large sums of money to heal them so you could quickly become wealthy? Wizards are scary. They summon demons and burn people, and like cabals of people try to attack them. Healers are happy. People like healers. And then with your money, you can hire tanks and melee and ranged and support and mages. That's what we call entrepreneurship. Please explain the Plague Doctor plushie tweet. I saw a Plague Doctor on a Facebook ad, and I said, wow, that is so cool. And it was well overpriced. So I went to Amazon and found the very same Plague Doctor plushie for half the price, and I bought it there. But I still repeatedly clicked the ad just a few times because why not? And then it arrived in the mail a week later, and it's a tiny little Plague Doctor plushie that sits on my desk as a symbolic reminder of the year 2020. It was the plague that wasn't really a plague, but still enough of a plague to really mess up the world. All of the older medieval plagues just laugh at COVID. They're like, ha. What do you think about the practice of Reiki? Talk to James Randi about that. It's made up. There's no evidence for it. Frou-frou magic. It's the magic of placebo. Charles, who's the best Super Smash Brother character? I don't know, Mario. Did I just offend a lot of people? Terran, Protoss, and Zerg. Terran are the most fun to play. Protoss are, I think, the best race. Ever consider making a DRM system? This would be a great example of a utility of a non-fungible asset. I love these people. Oh my God, he didn't answer a Twitter question in 5 seconds. It must mean he only does YouTube questions. Periscope doesn't work for most people. When I live stream it, a lot of people have, including me, difficulty based on the network they're on, actually getting a Periscope live stream. It's very tough. So I tend to answer more YouTube questions because that's more persistent. The YouTube link gets shared far more. Tell us good news. Come on, we deserve it. Okay. You guys really want some good news? You guys want me to tell you some of that secret squirrel shit that we've been hiding? You know, that little bird. You really want me to tell you what I know? Because there are some good things coming that you'd all be very happy about. But I'm not going to tell you. Tezos or Ada? Ask the market. Oof, that burned too much. The only reason why I'm dick to them is they've been such a brutal dick to us. They called Cardano so many times an MLM Ponzi scheme, defrauded the elderly, a copy-paste of their technology. You know, happy to work with people in that ecosystem, but there's certain members of that community whose head so far up their own asses. And they've said some really hurtful, horrible things, as has the EOS community from time to time, for my crime of telling them that Dan Larimer was going to take the money and run. Go figure. Guys, the truth hurts. Don't attack the messenger. Take the message and think about it. I don't have a lot of sympathy for people who raise hundreds of millions or billions of dollars. You encumber gargantuan responsibilities if you're willing to engage in that endeavor, and you have to commit yourself for years or decades to complete those responsibilities. How's Longmon? Oh, come on. Longmont's great. We got Nextlight, fastest internet in the world. I don't even get it because my farm is too far out. Go figure. You follow any esport? Yes, I do. League of Legends. I love League of Legends. Used to play it all the time. One of these days, I'll create a League of Legends team. It'll be like the Jamaican bobsledders team. I'll go to a very small Caribbean country and form a league. It'll be Dominica. And we will win. I don't know. Maybe we'll like turn down the temperature in the room just to be more in line with the movie. Trinidad and Tobago, yeah, man. And we'll do it out of the University of West Indies. You know. Your thoughts on vitamin D3 deficiency and high morbidity? Well, if you're in England, the vitamin D deficiency and, of course, high morbidity in the pandemic is indeed an issue. And at the BBC, we always attempt to talk about the issues. It's a big issue. This Week in Virology has several great interviews about it. James Campbell also has several great pieces on it. Highly correlated, probably causal. And in general, if you have vitamin D deficiencies, you're probably going to have a harder time with pathogens in general. So just do your own research on that one, and very much recommend that you take a supplement. Most people are deficient, but listen to the doctors first. Any games on your phone? Yes, I have 2 games on my phone. Beamdog Studios, Baldur's Gate 1 and 2 on my phone. Yeah. The Steak Man. Best regards from Tokyo, Charles. Yes, he is. Last time I met him, I was actually in Tokyo, and I went to Ruth Chris Steakhouse. And he was a lovely host, and we brought over a lot of people who are core members of Cardano, and Ken was there, and a lot of my people were there, and we had a private dining room, and we ate a lot of incredibly good steak. And I burnt my hand on those famous 500-degree plates that they have, and it was a great experience. But actually, I really enjoyed the graciousness. I think we stayed a little bit over closing hours, and it's just incredible to see how many phenomenal community members that we have and how they go the extra mile. It really makes life fun. What was the bill? Well, we had about, I think, 14, 15 people at Ruth Chris Steakhouse. So you can imagine how expensive that bill was. And I was the guy who had to pick it up. But I'm often the guy who pays the restaurant tab. The sticker shock has long faded in my life. A few years ago, it was a much, much worse thing. Would you consider doing an interview with Lex Friedman? Yeah, I'll get around to it. Lex is a great guy, and it'd be a lot of fun to do something with him. But, I'll do the whole circuit. I'll do Lex and the Weinstein and go through the whole thing. And then eventually build up to Rogan. Rogan is like the final boss you have to slay. We'll talk about elk meat. I eat a lot of that, actually. Bow hunting. We'll talk about BJJ, and isolation tanks and all these things. I grow mushrooms. That's going to be a fun topic. We'll go full Michael Pollan on that. Inevitably, DMT will come up, and I have some friends in that industry, in that space, and there's a lot of stories to tell there. That'll be a lot of fun that I never told here. I'm actually keeping them in reserve. There's guys, literally a whole Rogan strategy of things to talk about to make me the most interesting of all time. My goal is to break the Alex Jones record and be the longest Rogan episode of all time, too. Is Silvio Macaulay a genius? Yes. Truman True, and very nice human being, super charismatic, and very much a good man. And he's got a great vision. He's got a great team at Algorand, and we have nothing but respect for the Algorand project. There's some projects I kick the hell out of them because they should know better, and there's other projects I actually really admire, and I think they do good work, like what Mrna is doing with Avalanche. Example of something that has a right to exist. The same for Tezos, the same for Algorand. I think these projects make the space a better place, given that they exist, because they're bringing new things to the table that we can all learn from. Is Tesla overvalued? The vision, no. The stock price, probably yes. Guys, remember something. GM just announced that by 2035, they're no longer going to sell gasoline and diesel cars. This is a company that just 20 years ago retired the most popular electric vehicle, saying there was absolutely no market for it. Tesla has had that kind of impact on the totality of the whole industry, from the hypercars all the way down to the consumer vehicles. So whether they succeed or fail, it's mission accomplished. It's just surviving long enough to force the whole industry to change. And by 2050, there will probably not be gas and diesel cars on the road. There'd just be no reason for it. Just like there's no coal-powered cars or anything like that. Don't even bother to try. The steam engine's gone. Any fun with YubiKeys lately? I just approved a $400,000 extension to our hardware budget for Cardano. How about that? Mostly covering Trezor and Ledger, but there is definitely going to be a U2FA component to that, and we're extending it up. And we're going to try to do something cool with Catalyst. We'll make an announcement at a later date. Duncan Trussell is the longest running Rogan podcast. How many hours was it? I know Jones got close to it. And come on, let's be honest here. Jones was far more interesting than Duncan. Have you ever seen the new solar-powered car Lightyear 1? I've seen the Aptera with the solar skin, but I have not seen that one. I'll take a look at it. Okay, this is an interesting one. Any recommendations of which COVID-19 vaccine to choose? So really, it's how far up the river you want to be. So you have three ways you can do this. You can either be all the way back, in which case you're going to send an instruction to your body to manufacture the RNA that in turn that gives an instruction to manufacture the protein that in turn creates the immune system response. That's what Johnson & Johnson and AstraZeneca and these other adenoviral vector vaccines are effectively doing. They give you a chimpanzee virus or something like it. It infects you, but it's been genetically engineered not to replicate. Because it's a chimp virus, not a human virus, you generally don't have an immune response to that. And that virus carries a viral payload, a DNA payload that interfaces with your DNA, and it has it manufacture some instructions to go and make this viral material that causes the immune response. And huzzah. There's been a lot of work in that line. There's an Ebola virus vaccine and so forth. But it goes all the way through the nucleus and touches your genome. But apparently it doesn't interact with your DNA other than just making something. It doesn't get stuck in there, or so they say. Okay. Those will be the most used vaccines of all the vaccines. Why? Because Johnson & Johnson is a Goliath, and their platform is single shot, one and done. And they're going to be approved here mid-February. AstraZeneca is a two-shot platform, but they're the cheapest of all the vaccines. They sell for about $3.50 per dose. 2 shots. Then the next step in the chain is the mRNA vaccines. And that says, okay, we're going to take those instructions and we're going to put them in a piece of fat and make sure there's an adjuvant there, create an immune response. And we're going to inject you with that. And those don't touch your DNA. They just go to your cellular machinery and say, hey, go do some stuff, and it creates an immune response, and there you go. They're remarkably effective. They create incredible immune responses, like 95% effective. The Israeli data is showing it's holding at 92%, and it looks like the Africa strain is endemic in Israel from the genomic genomic surveillance that they're doing, as is the UK strain. So despite the fact that there are variants that are evading some of the immune response, the mRNA vaccines are holding up. And they're first to market because they're designed with a computer, and they're super, super simple. They also have a higher side effect profile for two reasons. One, they create such a strong immune response. And two, the polyethylene glycol that's in the vaccine, that seems, because it's in a lot of consumer products, some people have strong allergic reactions. So we've seen a higher incidence of anaphylactic shock, higher incidence of just feeling shitty for a few days. However, it's still relatively rare, all things considered. And generally speaking, if your chance is 1 in 780 or to 1 in 1,000 of dying from the disease, and we're seeing a huge amount of people with long COVID, neurological symptoms, depression, heart damage, nerve damage from the disease, the fact that you're going to have a mild to moderate side effect as probably the worst outcome, makes a lot more sense to take the vaccine. Now, fully down the river, there's the safest of the vaccines, in my view, and that's what Novavax is doing. That's the protein subunit, where they say, whoa, let's not co-opt your cellular machinery or interact with your DNA. Let's just make that spike protein, and let's put it on a dummy thing that kind of looks like COVID, but it's just the protein, and inject it with an adjuvant, and then it'll create an immune system response. The hepatitis vaccines and other things follow this approach. It's incredibly safe. There's no genetic interactions, no DNA, no RNA, just goes in. Of course, it'll have some side effects, but it looks like the UK data shows that that's about 90% effective. And they have long shelf life, and you actually make these spike proteins with genetically engineered moth DNA. So, moth cells. So if I had to pick all three of those, probably would pick the Novavax vaccine. However, both my father and brother have been vaccinated with the Pfizer vaccine because they're doctors in Wyoming. And given that we share so much similar genetic material and metabolisms, it's very likely that, given that they didn't have an issue with that, that if I was to get the Pfizer vaccine, I wouldn't have an issue either, although your mileage may vary. Now, regardless of whichever one is available, my recommendation is take it, because all of them are probably safe. Over 80 million people worldwide have been vaccinated at the moment, and we have not really seen significant issues from that. And why would we? It's a respiratory virus. We're pretty good at making vaccines for respiratory viruses. People say, oh, it's a new thing. Well, is influenza a new thing? No. And every year we make a vaccine for that. And these platforms, mRNA, for example, has been studied for 3 decades. And a lot of these things are analogies to existing vaccination platforms, which have already been tested in some cases for decades in different vaccines like hepatitis or measles or Ebola, and which took quite a bit of time to bring to market. And there's no evidence of vaccine amplification. There's no evidence of these bizarre theories that exist. So whichever one exists, take it. The problem is we're not having an honest public health conversation. There's 2 phases to vaccination. One phase is the reduction of lethality, and then the other phase is the elimination of the disease entirely from circulation. The ship has sailed. This is an endemic disease. It's going to be with humanity likely forever. The lethality is going to decrease dramatically, and we've already seen this in Israel. 47% of their population is vaccinated. Over 75% at this rate will be vaccinated by the end of March, which means herd immunity is present. And there's a bias in that vaccination towards the at-risk groups. So mortality should fall within the next 6 weeks, if the data holds, by over 92%. And at that point, if it's a disease where you don't get seriously ill if you're infected, you can't spread it to people who will get seriously ill because all of the vulnerable populations have been vaccinated, there's a public policy question of, why are we doing what we're doing? Why are we wearing masks? I mean, I wear them. I comply. I just got this, the Atmo Blue. How about that? Kickstarter, yay. So it's actually a mask that protects you because it's got an H13 HEPA filter inside of it. And this is significantly better than, and it has positive air pressure, so I can have a beard and wear it. And I don't have to worry about fitting it to my face or shaving. This is also $120. It's not a cheap device. Okay, so there's plenty of these things floating around. There's also a cool UV mask as well. Okay, that protects the face, but not the eyes. And if you touch that, there's a problem. And you also still have to wash your hands. There's no reason to do any of this if you have 75% of your population vaccinated, regardless of what's going on in the world. And I say, oh, but there's going to be all these variants and strains. Well, yeah, of course, there's variants and strains of influenza every year. If influenza was novel, it would have a significantly higher lethality, but it's not. And so we, as a society, as a population, have a greater degree of immunity to it. So when we get it, we're okay. Even amongst these variants, the cushioning effect from the vaccines is enough to protect you against the South Africa, UK variant. The frustration from a public health perspective is not that you're not protected and you're going to die and get seriously ill. The frustration is that we lose a property called sterilizing immunity, which it looks like we have. Sterilizing immunity is where not only are you protected from the disease, but you are also protected from infection altogether, meaning you don't spread it to other people. If you lose that property, all you're doing is vaccination if you're making asymptomatic carriers, which is actually bad from a public health perspective. Good for you. So we're going to have this forever. Whatever vaccine's available, take it. It's how far up the stream you're going to be. There's one platform shots, two platform shots, enormous innovation. There's even research being done right now for vaccination pills, where you take a pill and it vaccinates you. Go figure. And there's also this traditional vaccines they're looking into, like Tonks is looking into a weakened form of COVID, and they grow it in a chicken egg, but it takes actually years to bring that to market. I think they're safe. I think they're effective. There's enormous data to that end. We've vaccinated more people with these platforms than most vaccines ever, except for big things like smallpox and polio and measles and these things. So I don't worry too much about it, but I think we're going to live with it forever. And what's going to end up happening is COVID will get blended with the influenza shot. When you get your flu shot, you're also getting a COVID shot for those strains. And the mRNA vaccines long-term will be the end of flu and the end of COVID, because for the first time in human history, we can keep up with the mutations. Eventually, enough drift will happen that they escape vaccine efficacy and immune system efficacy. mRNA vaccines, you can, within a 6-week period, reconfigure the vaccine and create a booster shot to match whatever is circulating. So it's no longer you have to guess and use computer models. You're actually able to real time make an effective vaccine. And no, you don't have to go back through another phase 3 clinical trial. They don't do that with influenza. Anyway, I know many of you are super anti-vaxxer. They think the vaccines are poison or Bill Gates is killing the world. I see thousands of comments about this, and I always reply the same way. I just don't care what you think. I really don't, because there's overwhelming evidence and facts against you. And if you want to confirmation bias your way to a small set of data, that's a personal decision you make. And as a libertarian, I just don't care. It's your thing. It's not my thing. And the reality is, out of self-interest, enough people will vaccinate for herd immunity to occur. And we will never get rid of coronaviruses. We're never going to get rid of SARS. There will be a SARS-3. There was a SARS-1, a SARS-2. They'll make a sequel. SARS-3 is coming. So this is what it is. And what I care about is the vulnerable people in society can get vaccinated if they so choose. And now we're protecting them, and they're okay, because the vaccines are so effective, regardless if this is endemic or not. There's no evidence that those who have been vaccinated with the RNA vaccines are going to get seriously ill with the current strain. And we can keep up with mutation with just genomic surveillance. So no, we don't need this insanity of everybody wearing a mask and social distancing and society being in perpetual lockdowns. We just need to vaccinate the people over 55 and the people with a lot of comorbidities. That alone ends this. And now we're less lethal than influenza, because any of those people in the risk group will not get seriously ill. Don't believe me? Look at the Israeli data. 190,000, only 20 got sick. None got seriously ill post-vaccination after going through both rounds. We have a living example of an entire country that's nearly there, and by March we'll be there, and you can just follow along and see how long that lasts. That's what the world's going to look like by December. Is that the lament configuration? Hellraiser box over your right shoulder. Yes, I have such things to show you. Do you like L. Ron Hubbard's sci-fi? Yeah, his greatest work was Scientology. It's a great piece of science fiction. Terrible novels, great cult. Do you play chess? I used to. I used to play 25 games a day. I was obsessed. Please, no more COVID-19 questions. Guys, COVID-19 impacts us all. More than 1 million people have died. The world is shut down. We can't resume normal operations. If you work in the service industry, you probably don't have a job, or the job you have isn't paying you enough to survive. My country's economy, probably your country's economy, has been destroyed. What, we're going to not talk about that because you politically disagree with something, or you think stuff is made up, or medical science is not medical science and there's a lab coat conspiracy? No, we're going to talk about things that affect all of us and have profound long-term implications on the human race. If you don't like it, go find somebody else to listen to. Thoughts on Robinhood? They're in for a world of class action lawsuits. What's your opinion on Musk's brain chip thing? You're talking about Neuralink. One of the greatest innovations in human history, probably will do more long-term to change the human race than anything else. And why is that? Because Musk has this magic superpower to instantly recognize what he needs to do to be the first mover. We call this cascading disruption. It's the tagline of my company. I try to do it. Our crypto industry does a decent job at it. We kind of do a reasonable job, I'd say, at our company. As much as we get picked on, I mean, we went from 72 million to 11 billion. We went from nothing to 1 million people. And we went from that to the scientific leader in the industry. And we have a clear path to getting eventually nation states to adopt what we're doing. We just have to be around long enough. So what Musk has done is that with Neuralink, he recognized he has a path to beta test his technology with millions of people to the point where the technology does what he wants it to do long term. So those millions of people are paraplegics and quadriplegics, people with Parkinson's, people with neurodegenerative disorders, Alzheimer's. Basically, these people are in a position where it's never going to get better, it's only going to get worse, and modern medicine has nothing to offer them. So as long as you can show that you're not going to do harm, or you're only going to do a little bit of harm, those people will be more than glad to sign up for a clinical trial to see if these devices work. And they will, because the science is sound. It's just a question of how effective actually when you're talking about these things. Okay, so what that means is that he just has to survive through enough iterations to get the technology to a point where it works for everybody and all the ecosystem is built out. Tesla is a great example of that. It has nothing to do with how many cars they sell. It has to do with a clock. Tesla has to survive until we build a battery infrastructure to rival the gasoline infrastructure in America, and for batteries to get enough range that the range is now more than any human could drive in a day. That's it. And they're almost there. 500, 600 miles in the Model S. It used to be 300. Give it another 5-10 years, they're going to be flirting with 1,000. Give it another 5-10 years, they're going to be flirting with 2,000 miles, and there'll be superchargers everywhere, and every car company will be building these things, and most people will have at-home charging infrastructure. Once he's reached that point, it doesn't matter if Tesla succeeds or fails. The concept is here, and there's simply no way for combustion engines to compete, because you're literally having to put a power plant in your car that's really heavy and has maybe 20% efficiency compared to an energy storage medium that, because we have billions of cell phones every year, we want them better, faster, cheaper, with longer batteries, lighter, easier and faster to charge. Your battery technology always gets better for free. You can spend $0 on R&D, but because LG exists and Samsung exists and Panasonic exists and Apple exists, just by these companies and their cohorts alone, your technology gets better. You're downstream of a huge competitive pressure. And there's many revolutions coming. Graphene batteries are coming. We have state chemistry that's coming. And as a consequence, all of that stuff he gets for free in 10 to 20 years. It's just economy of scale at that point. So he's surviving. And Neuralink is the exact same model. Put it in beta test it with quadriplegics and paraplegics. And at one point, maybe 10 years from now, 20 years from now, someone who is paralyzed will walk again. And they become a living billboard for faith, trust, and confidence in the technology. Just like having a Roadster be every Lamborghini and Ferrari is a billboard for the technology, and the Model S being a better car than the S-Class or the BMW 7 Series is a billboard for the technology. Okay, then once you have that, everybody wants it, and then you wake up and you'll have 25 million people, then 250 million people who get the implants, and then you can't not get the implant because you need it for competitive reasons. Because all your competitors are able to use it to learn faster than you, think faster than you, and interact with computers in ways you can't. Imagine being able to write a paper at a rate of 10,000 words a minute. Imagine being able to read at a rate of 100,000 words a minute. That's what Neuralink is bringing. You simply can't afford not to have it once it hits market at that scale. Time horizon, 20 years, 25 years. It's not a huge rush. He's going to live a long time, but the trend pushes us there, and competition will come in. And even if Neuralink doesn't do it, once it's been proven, once a single person can walk again because of it, the technology is here forever. And that's cascading disruption. It's extraordinary. And Musk is the best person in the world at it. Yeah, hang on. This is a great example right here. It says, not a question if COVID is real, but rather how badly overblown the Chicken Little response has been. It's not overblown in certain respects. I don't think you appreciate how horrific it is for certain people. I appreciate it because it deeply impacted my family. Family members had to treat it. They literally were in the ICU with these people. And they weren't just all 85-year-olds who have cancer and diabetes and megadeath viruses floating around their body. There were people who were 25 years old who worked at the gas station that my brother filled his car at, who was a cashier, who got it and got on a ventilator for 2 months and finally got off, and then has permanent damage in the lungs for the rest of his life until they can replace the lungs or stem cells can repair him. He basically has the lungs of a 75-year-old person who smoked for 60 years and worked in a coal mine and then took moonlight to go be an asbestos installer. That is not overblown for that person. You say, oh, but that's just one person. There now are millions of people suffering from long COVID across the world who have heart damage, lung damage, neurological damage. That's not overblown. That's devastating. And let's be real here. Probably the amount of people who died during the Spanish flu would have died from COVID had not modern medicine existed. We can treat ARDS now. We can treat bacterial pneumonia now. We can treat all the kinds of things we couldn't treat in 1918. And despite the fact that we can treat these things and modern medicine is very advanced, more than 1 million people have died. And before this is all said and done, 2 to 3 million people are going to die. And a multiple of 5 to 10 more will be just like that cashier at that gas station who was 25 years old with the permanent lung damage. Imagine being a physicist or a mathematician or a doctor. You contract a virus and it leaves you in a state where it's difficult to think. Is that overblown for you? If you can no longer do your job and you get so fatigued that after an hour or 2 hours, you're just not able to stand up anymore. You have to sit down and take a break. And that lingers and lingers and lingers and lingers, potentially forever. You know, there's a lot of people who have anosmia now. And that's a mild symptom relative to these others. That's the inability to smell. Could you imagine living life, never being able to taste food again or smell again? Is that overblown for those people? Just because it didn't impact you or someone close to you or your family does not mean it's not overblown. And, you know, let's be real here. We need to do this in society at least once to wake everybody up, because this is the best of the pandemics we're going to get. Every pandemic here on forward will likely be a human engineered disease. There's a greater than 50% chance of that because there's too many people, technology is too good, gain and function research is too good, and it's going to be too easy for somebody in a lab somewhere in the world to create a pandemic. So imagine COVID with an Ebola-like death rate. You know, well, that can't happen. Well, what if you bake in a 4 or 5 week incubation delay where you're asymptomatic and you make it as contagious as measles? Why not? You don't play by the normal virology game anymore because you can engineer things. And because you don't play by that game, evolution's not having any say in it. You can do all kinds of horrible, horrible things. It used to be only nation states could do that. And it was tightly regulated and controlled. And even so, we were super scared that smallpox would break out again, or like aerosolized Ebola would break out or something from a Russian lab or an American lab or something like that. Now there's asymmetries here, and it will happen. It's not can, it's not if, it's will. By shutting the whole world down and kicking everybody in the teeth, it's making us be very serious about how to actually do quarantines. We fucking suck at it. This Africa strain in South Africa and the UK strain, because we don't do genomic surveillance, it's in North Carolina. It's in Colorado. We're not really traveling much anymore. We've been in quarantine since March. We should be pretty good at locking borders down and contact tracing and managing the spread of things. Yet we can't. It blows my mind that the world's not there yet. We are colossally unprepared for what's coming next. So we need to take this as a learning moment, a teaching moment, and have a worldwide conversation of when this happens for reals. And it's not just millions, but billions. And it's not just tens of millions with permanent disability, half of the human race with permanent disabilities, and total collapse of society. Maybe, just maybe, we should invest proactively money in making sure this never happens again. And that when it does happen, we can shut it down quickly, burn it out quickly, and vaccinate people quickly. A great paper that talks about how we can take every single agent that could cause a pandemic and pre-build most of the vaccines for them to the point where we could launch a phase 3 clinical trial and get it done within a 4-month period. Could you imagine if we were able in May of last year to bring 100 vaccines to market and have 1 billion in circulation ready to go? This would all be over. You'd all be back to work. You'd all be living life again. I'd be living life normally again. You'd be living life normally again. It would have never gotten to a point where that guy at the gas station now has to walk with an oxygen canister. But we couldn't because we underinvested. We undervalued these problems. We didn't understand the existential problems that they cause. So it's not a question of is it overblown or not. For the people who are impacted, it's the worst thing in the world, including the people who were impacted by the lockdowns, who committed suicide, who were victims of domestic violence, whose lives were totally destroyed, lost their businesses, The divorces that happen, this is something they're going to live with for a long, 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 long time. Okay, their lives are done for a long time or ever. It's now a question of what do we do with this? We saw the corruption, we saw the lies, we saw the lack of faith in institutions, we saw the predatory capitalism that occurred, we saw the lack of preparedness in our supply chains, we saw our inability to do contract tracing, we saw problems with our databases. It's basically a Simpsons episode when Mr. Burns decides to run the fire drill and Homer Simpson's the first to escape the power plant. 20 minutes later, had it been a fire for real, everyone would have been dead. You only get one of those before the real fire happens. And this was ours. Live with it, deal with it, learn from it. Everything is an opportunity to grow and learn, even the bad things. Ooh, a placental cell platform that will reverse the lasting side effects of ARDS clinical trials. Yeah, it is pretty cool. But the problem with a lot of these stem cell therapies, they never seem to get there. And we're waiting for the hockey stick on that. Your views on the Grayscale Cardano Trust? I don't think there is one. If there was, we'd see an SEC filing. They've just registered a name. It's quite common. Companies will proactively register things. Manage your expectations accordingly. Barry's a very smart businessman, and I think he's maximizing his options. But until I see an approved application from the Securities Exchange Commission, I'm not going to hold my breath. Lost all respect. Out. Get out. Go live your life. Find something better to do. Pet something. Enjoy your Dunning-Kruger. Enjoy your certainty. Enjoy the way you live things and how you think and you do your stuff. That's the great part about being a libertarian. It's live and let live. You don't try to indoctrinate people. You don't try to force your ideas on people. You share your opinion. And people are supposed to listen and hear you and debate you. But we don't live in that kind of a world. We live in a world where everybody has to be right. And if you're hearing someone talk, you're asking, is this person validating my views and my opinions, or are they the enemy? And if they're the enemy, this is what you say, and you leave because you know you're right. Everyone else is evil. You're good. They're bad. Your facts are the only facts that matter, and all other facts are not true. They just can't be right. And any evidence and data you see to the contrary must be a lie. And there's a grand conspiracy to keep you down and everybody else up. And where does that leave you? Isolated, lonely, unsuccessful, dependent or independent of society, but not interdependent, and ultimately suspicious, cynical, and bereft of friends and joy. We're humans, we're social. You can be around people you disagree with. It's okay. Try it out sometime. Believe it or not, it makes your life better. In my social circle, I'm surrounded by people who have views that are radically different than my own. In my own company, I have communists working for me. I'm a libertarian, and I have people who are so far down the political spectrum that they think property rights should not exist. And we get along. We eat pizza. We call it the people's pizza. That's how life should be. We argue about ideas and values, but we respect our common humanity and have empathy for each other. Learn that. It's the single most valuable thing if you learn anything in life, because that is the one thing that will make all things possible in life. Yeah, but this is another thing. So you're probably on the political side of the spectrum that thinks Pizzagate was just completely crazy. Well, ideas about blood-sucking cults and pizza houses are a little much, but every one of those things has a kernel of truth in it. Let's agree that Pizzagate's crazy. But then you must also explore and entertain Epstein and explain why he was ignored. Why has the media not gone after that story? You're a journalist. Your job is to make noise. Your job is to call truth to power and expose corruption. You have a person through social graph is connected to Bill Gates, Bill Clinton, Donald Trump, Prince Andrew, and thousands of other incredibly prominent people in society who hung out with them, had dinner with them, and in some cases had them fly on his jet and go to his sex island. And nobody wants to write about it. Nobody wants to do investigative journalism. And that person died in mysterious chaoses. They're not even talking about Ghislaine Maxwell anymore. So yeah, okay, Pizzagate's crazy, but the reason Pizzagate exists in the public dialogue is because we don't talk about the things we should talk about, because those things are inconvenient to people in power. For every conspiracy, there's a kernel of truth. There's a kernel of truth to the anti-vaxxer movement. It is absolutely true that the pharmaceutical industry does terrible things, and in some cases allows medicine to exist for profit that either does nothing or hurts us. There's a growing body of evidence that statins aren't the end-all be-all, and in some cases are causing problems, but they are among the most profitable of drugs that are floating around. So when you allow that to persist, then you get to the next level, and the next level, and the next level. And then eventually you're talking about Bill Gates and nanoviruses and quantum dots and shit, and who the fuck knows? Okay, it's a slippery slope, and you have to go to root cause, and you have to be universally honest. And if you're unwilling to be honest about inconvenient things, those inconvenient things grow up and become monsters, and they become much worse. Thoughts on the Ethereum Foundation partnering with Reddit? Good for you. How about we just build something to replace Reddit? Will Monero-type privacy be possible with native assets? We actually are building a private native asset standard. We will publish that paper in a bit. And that's 100% correct. Epstein belonged to intelligence. Yeah, he had deep ties with the Central Intelligence Agency and likely the Mossad as well. And just ask yourself, how did a guy get so rich and so well connected and be basically like a high school dropout with no family connections or other things to justify that kind of growth of colossal wealth, and obviously not a very good investor? Can you ever identify the people who did business with him? Like, if you're a hedge fund billionaire, you're Steve Cohen, you're James Simons. I mean, Cohen is like on the short side for GameStop. We know everything he does when he does it, and we know who he's working with and his alliances, and they make shows like Billions, okay? You're pretty notable when you're at that level of wealth. You have this guy who's at that level of wealth, but no one has ever done business with him or knows anything about him, and his trading history is completely opaque. Yeah, no intelligence agency there. That's where conspiracy theories come from. Don't address the base facts, and in journalists being negligent in their job, we ask why. Because it's beneficial in their self-interest to write stories about this because they get Pulitzer Prizes for exposing corrupt, evil, rich people. Or at least that's what we're told to believe. Charles, have you ever traveled in the Middle East? Yes, I've been to Jordan. I've been to Israel. I have been to the UAE. I've been to Saudi Arabia. I've been all throughout the Middle East and other countries in the Middle East as well. Petra is my favorite old thing in the Middle East. Rode camels there. Stands on colloidal silver. A lot of people seem to believe it does good for them. And there's this libertarian politician, Montana, that took so much of it, he actually has Argeria. He turned his skin gray, which is pretty cool. But silver actually has great antimicrobial properties. And I wish there would be more science on scientific inquiry on these alternative treatments, because some of them might actually work. Who knows? I don't personally take it, and I don't know many people who do. But that's one of those categories of should be studied because there might be evidence that does something interesting for people. It doesn't seem particularly harmful, although your skin can turn gray if you take too much of it. Blue light or red light? Blue light to adjust your melatonin cycle, and then red light for regrowing your hair or something, or cellular therapy. There's some guys trying to sell me on red light. It's actually one in Colorado. I'm going to try it out. I always try new stuff. Why not? Hashgraph is doing 400 times more transactions than Cardano. Okay, Captain Patton. You know who's doing more transactions than you? Amazon. How are you any different if one person can make a unilateral decision to deplatform people and deny people? You're not. You're no better than a database. Get out of my channel. I have no time for this comedy. Red room. Oh my God. Hi, old man. You made me discover Periscope. I know this person. That is Emanuele Costa. He was actually one of the very first employees of IOHK. And he came on, and him and his wife, and did some phenomenal work for us way back in the very early days. He even came out to Japan. And then his wife went to become a student at University of Edinburgh. But we got to where we're at because of his hard work and many others. It's amazing when you're CEO, you run a company, you have people that have their exits and their entrances, and every now and then they show back up. It's good to see you. I hope everything's okay in Italy. And sorry for outing you. Well, you know, I also enjoy our late night conversations, and I like long walks on the beach. Lots of love in Virginia. Yeah, I used to live in Fairfax, and then I lived down in Blacksburg. I like Blacksburg a little bit more. Traffic was better. And some good restaurants down there, too, especially in Roanoke. How old are you? Old enough to know better, but not quite old enough to care. Have you ever been to Austria, Charles? Yes, I've been to Austria. It is a wonderful place. Many beautiful buildings and people, yeah? Have you ever freestyled on the ocarina and the ocarina of time? I am so sorry, Link, I have not. Hi, sir. My kid 15 admires you. You love animals. Are you a vegetarian? I am not, although I do grow a lot of my own food. And I have to admit, if I had to kill my animals to eat meat, I probably wouldn't do it. There are levels of hypocrisy in humanity, and most of us would be unwilling to hunt at this day and age. And most of us, if forced, would become vegetarians. And to be honest, I love caprese. I love salads, and just good steak is hard to argue with. I hope that we can do this lab-grown meat thing faster, and then I can switch over to that, and I'll never look back. I'd hunt for chicken eggs. I have chickens. Got over 10 chickens. Eat fresh chicken eggs every day. Go out there, get 6, 7 eggs. And for a long time, I wasn't getting any eggs. I thought I had a mouse problem. It turned out I had a dog problem. One of the dogs figured out how to get to the chicken coop, was eating the eggs in a very clever way. And I didn't think the dog could fit through that chicken door, but the dog could. Damn dog. Yeah, and this is the point. Charles, do you know that in 1918, 600,000 Americans died of Spanish flu? In 2021, 600,000 are expected to die of COVID. That 600,000 is a composite, so it'll be last year plus this year. Vaccines are going to break it, but that constant waving that happens would have eventually gotten up to 10 million. And the reason why so many died with Spanish flu is because they didn't have the ability to treat the ARDS. There was no ventilators and antibiotics and these things. So even if COVID didn't kill you, Spanish flu didn't kill you, these secondary infections like bacterial pneumonia would kill you. And you can't quite treat that. Brain octane oil or MCT oil? I take MCT oil when I do it. When I eat well, I actually lose a lot of weight and I get healthier. But I'm generally, I've been working so goddamn long. But when I eat well, for Bulletproof Coffee, what I do is I take Kerrygold unsalted butter, and I put that in with some MCT, a teaspoon of MCT into the coffee, mix it together, and it's just amazing. And that's breakfast. Then for lunch, Ben Bickman, he created this great supplement. You mix it with coconut milk, equal parts fat, equal parts protein, and then you drink some yogurt with it, the drinkable yogurt, Siggy's, great stuff. And then you have dinner, eat whatever the hell you want. You just do that. You're kind of intermittent fasting. You're staying mostly ketogenic, and you're going to be okay. I don't do that, though, and I should. When I do, I lose like 20 pounds in 2 months, and I start looking great. And I can wear those nice fitted shirts from Xenia. Instead, I have to wear cowboy shirts. Cowboys get fat. Charles, let us know when you come back to Sydney. I'd love to have a selfie with you. Yes, I will do a world tour when the world reopens, and I'll go all the way around every place. And of course, I'll stop in Australia And what we usually do is we schedule meetup groups or something like that, or we piggyback on some other event. And it's an open event, and lots of people come. And one time in Japan, I took 912 selfies with people. They made a long line, one person after another. I was having my secretary kind of count them like the little clicker, just out of morbid curiosity. And I was there for a very, very long time. And I shook a lot of hands. And, the first thing I did after I was done with that, I immediately went to the bathroom and washed my hands. Law of numbers, you're 912. At least one of them doesn't wipe. Come to New Zealand too. Yes, the land of the kakapo, my favorite bird. I'm a CS student graduating in May. Do you have any advice for me? Contribute to open source projects. Doesn't matter which ones, just build a portfolio there. Learn 2 or 3 programming languages that are exotic and unique, and solve at least one challenging problem in those languages, and develop some life skills. The single most valuable skill you can develop is active listening if you're a developer. And if you can do those things, you will find great success in life. Crumple or fold. The wrap it around your hand, pull it off. You have a perfect wipe. Now, this is the bad rule. Rule number 1, never work for anybody else. If you're unwilling to follow, then why should people be willing to follow you? Followership is just as important as leadership. And there are plenty of people in life who I would follow, even though I'm a leader, and I don't have to follow anybody. But I would if they asked. And so you have to have heroes. And that's another good piece of life advice. Find mentors and find heroes and learn how to be humble and serve. Volunteer, take shit jobs, take care of the weak. One of the most valuable things you can do in life to learn humility is to take care of those who can't take care of themselves. More than once, I've had to deal with people who were dying of cancer. Years ago, when I wanted to be a doctor, I took several roles where I was working with elderly people, either on a volunteer paid basis. And that was tremendously valuable for my development as a person, because when you look at these people and you develop empathy for them, it makes you realize that one day you may be in that position. So following and working for others and being in a service role is so incredibly important. And once you do that and you do it well, then you've earned the right to be a leader. And then people work for you, not because you demand it, but because they want to. Overhead bin or under the seat? Always under the seat if I can, unless they put you in the first row, then you have to put in the overhead bin. Jesus, yeah, right here. This pisses me off. Cadillac did cease producing the CT60. You think Mercedes CLS is a good alternative? I will never buy a Mercedes or a BMW. Fuck them. Never, ever, 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 ever. Oh, every time I go to Europe and I do the Uber Black, those are the cars, and I ride in the back of them all the time. They're good chauffeur cars, terrible cars to own. They depreciate massively, and they always have problems. Cadillacs are great. I love my CT6. Phenomenal car. They'll do another. They got to wait a little bit, and if they really piss me off, I'll buy an Urus, and I'll just drive that until Cadillac comes back into the game. There's some concern on Reddit about billion ADA being used to promote awareness adoption and that they're being minted. Could you clarify? That is fake news. I don't know where you're just coming up with that. It's fake news. It doesn't exist. Don't believe everything you read. I'm selling Toyota and Lexus. The Lexus RX is a phenomenal car. If I had to buy a Lexus, that's the one I'd own. Mm-hmm. Reading the book Apollo's Arrow that you recommended. Really good so far. Thank you so much. It's a great, great, great book. Ah, yes, yoga. Do not underestimate the value of yoga. General Stanley McChrystal is now doing yoga. Why? Because he was a paratrooper in addition to a badass military hero. And at some point, they're like, well, you're just going to be on painkillers and walk with a cane for the rest of your life. And he said, yeah, I don't think so. I said, well, you try yoga. Tried yoga in 16 months. All the back problems went away. All the walking problems went away. Really helped him out. It's hard being in the military for 40 years and carry around a rucksack and jump out of planes. It destroys your body. The fact that yoga could cure him tells you it can cure pretty much anybody. It's a miracle thing. It's undervalued. And also learning how to breathe, too. There's another great book, The Oxygen Advantage, which is a wonderful book to read. Charles, what's up with you and Cadillac? I just like fine made American cars with a century of heritage. You know, imagine this. Imagine this. You have this beautiful estate, and you wake up one day and you see this mysterious new plant that's just come out of nowhere, and it's super invasive and it's just massively grown. What's the first thing you do? You say, God, I got to get rid of this thing. So you go and get all your minions and you dig it up, you burn it out, you do whatever's necessary to get rid of that weed. Contrast that with the slow growing vine, little by little, little by little. And then you, 10 years later, look at your estate walls and you realize the entire boundary of your estate is covered in that vine. And it looks kind of nice. And it's so much work to tear it out, you leave it. What would you rather be? The up and coming invasive plant that's going to be noticed and torn away, or the vine that eventually will cowl the entire estate and survive even the owner? This is the difference between Doge and ADA. Do you ride a motorcycle? Used to have a Ducati SR2 Monster. A little too dangerous at the moment. Too many people rely on me. Although when I can go back and less people rely on me and things are better along, I'm going to try out one of those battery-powered motorcycles. I'm looking at Zero motorcycle. So we'll see. It's either that or I'll start paramotoring. Thoughts on Rolls-Royce? Super duper overpriced. But if you really want to fuck with your friends, go buy a Silver Spur. Doug DeMero, he's a famous car reviewer on YouTube. He did a YouTube review of the Rolls-Royce Silver Spur, and it was only like $35,000. It used to be like $300,000, and he was going through the specs, and he's horsepower adequate. They don't even tell you the horsepower of it. But never buy a car like that. $500,000, and you're paying like 14 grand for fucking umbrella holders in the doors. Come on, use your head. You can't tell me my CT6 is somehow vastly inferior, even though it's 1/5 of the cost. Some people, they just throw money at things, and they have no common sense. Do you own a Lamborghini? I do. I have a Huracan. I want to know the time of your birth. November 5th, 1987, 11:11 a.m. Okay, that's a good point. The spirit of ecstasy with the theft deterrent system. That's true. If you grab the hood ornament of a modern Rolls Royce, it actually retreats into the car. Now, I will tell you this. I have a friend who has a Rolls Royce, and that is an incredibly bug-prone system, and it breaks. And his has broken twice already. And every time he's had to have it repaired, they had to replace the motors, and it cost $8,500 to replace the motors, which is more money than it would cost to replace the hood ornament to begin with. There you go. How about that? Well, yeah, but what if I ever been right about a deadline? I'm having fun. I'm going to pay for it tomorrow. I got to get up early. I'm not going to get a lot of sleep. Am I a loser for spending hours listening to you? It's interactive. That's something. I mean, how many hours have you spent watching Game of Thrones or some other television show? It has a beginning, a middle, and an end, and you're just a spectator. At least here you can actually influence and change it and say, I asked that question. And let's say somehow, some way, Cardano goes to the moon. I become the next Steve Jobs. And you get to say, you asked Steve Jobs a question, right? And let's say there's a huge fucking scandal, and I go down in flames. You can say, I asked that guy who went down in flames. And let's say I completely just flatline and I'm sort of kind of popular. You'd be like, I asked that strange weirdo a question. In all three cases, you get at least some social cred. It's monotonically increasing social cred. You get no social cred outside of awareness of a show, which you could easily gain from reading a summary online. Yeah, saves you a lot of time. So no, the short answer is no. You are a hero, sir. Oh, guys, Steve Jobs in the age of social media would have been like Musk 10 times greater. He probably would have done AMAs. He probably would have done, he probably got really into Twitter and had opinions on everything because he was getting parabolic and Apple was becoming $1 trillion company. And the guy would have fucking walked on water. And at some point, his ego was so strong that he would have had this gargantuan social media presence. and just enjoyed kicking the hell out of people. I would every day be a fanboy with with popcorn, just listening to Steve Jobs rant. He could rant about anything. He could talk about like the time he designed a toilet seat, and I'd be like, wow, this is the most amazing story in the entire world. And Walt Mossberg would be sitting somewhere in a corner with a box of Kleenexes, be like, it's like the Immaculate Conception. It's so beautiful. And Guy Kawasaki would be somewhere over there, and he'd be like, oh, I got to write another book about this. I'm going ape. Author, publisher, entrepreneur. Actually, that's not true. That's not true. Where was that? I'm gonna highlight that, because this is a common misconception. Jobs didn't even write code. Jobs not only could write code, he actually knew how the circuitry worked on the board. Just because he didn't commonly do it didn't mean that he didn't know how to do it. And I'd argue that he knew more than most modern programmers know when they leave a bachelor's degree of CS, because he was closer to the foundations of computer science. Well, I read about Lovelace. Share why you chose these historical figures. I wanted a strong woman and a strong man. For example, with Q Adidas, when we reshoot it, we're probably going to name the currency Noether. Emmy Noether was a famous mathematician, and it would be really cool to say no ether, because that's actually phonetically how you spell it, as a currency. And of course, Hilbert will be the top co. I always try to do a masculine protocol name and a feminine currency name. And then you can get into a debate which one gets more notoriety. It's the one with the best logo. This is another thing that people do. So your ego is a bit high if you already compare yourself to Steve Jobs. Nowhere in that rant did I. In fact, I don't even like the guy that much. Read Isaacson's book. The guy was an asshole. My whole point was that life is what you make it, and you put yourself in scenarios and opportunities. I recently listened to the Joe Rogan podcast, and they had The Undertaker on, a very famous wrestler who was big guy in wrestling lore from the 90s on, kind of came after Hogan. And he had to wait 8 months in the same place every day, putting himself in the right place so that the right moment would arrive, so he could meet the right person, so that he could have a career as a wrestler. 8 months. Getting no. So let's say there are 45 people in the cryptocurrency space who are doing AMAs, and only one of them is going to be successful. And your goal is to interact with them or get to know them or something like that. If you follow all 45 just by putting yourself in that position, you'll achieve that goal. Just like the Undertaker, he had spent 8 months waiting to have the opportunity to get his shot to be a wrestler and go and live the life he wanted to live. So that's the point. So I wasn't comparing. You're not hearing properly. It's more about saying life is what you make it. You create opportunities. And if you really want something, you'll achieve it. You'll get there. Or you'll learn enough to know that you really didn't want it. Charles, any chance we'll talk about crypto? No, because it's all boring right now. It's the same things again. DeFi, Uniswap, Sushi Swap, this swap, anonymous developer, not anonymous developer, Dogecoin pumping, Dogecoin collapsing, EOS this, EOS that, this guy doing this part, Coinbase IPO. What will the Securities Exchange Commission do? What about the XRP case? It's boring. Yeah, I live it every day. I have 8 to 12 hours of meetings every day. Crypto. You want numbers? There are 3,700 dApps that are deployed on Ethereum. Here's another number for you. In 2020, 31% of all new dApps were deployed on Ethereum. The other 69% were not. Not a good statistic to live with. All saying the same thing. We didn't deploy on Ethereum because it was simply too expensive, and we felt the platform's long horizon would be less competitive than existing, despite the fact they do have a network effect. 81% of all dApps in circulation are still on Ethereum. There, we're talking crypto. How about that? Those are numbers. There's thousands more. Here's the really interesting one. How many off-chain infrastructure providers are there? And of the 3,000 plus dApps deployed on Ethereum, of the total 3,700 apps that are in circulation, most of which are no longer used, how many of those apps have off-chain capabilities, deployments, and is it the case that only 2 or 3 are controlling all of that? Interesting number. Go to the state of dApps, see if you can figure it out. Then, of the 3,000 dApps that are deployed in cryptocurrency space on Ethereum, how many of them are how distributed is the transaction volume and the value that's being transacted? Turns out there's a massive Pareto principle thing going on there. The top 100 consume more than 90% of all transactions and economic value in the system. And the other ones are long tails. The market's mostly consolidated to a set that are mostly ephemeral. Within 12, 24 months, the set rotates out. Okay, we're talking about crypto. Yeah, we talk about this every day, and we think about it. We ask why. We have a whole group of people. Why? Because we want to understand, where is the hockey puck going? Not today, but in 2 years. And we need to make sure we're there, because Ethereum's not going to be, because they're obsessed with today and they're managing today, and it slows them down. So being first mover means you're also the first to get the heavy backpack. I don't have that heavy backpack, and my shot at beating them is to make sure I know where the puck is going to be. So yeah, we think about crypto, and when I come here, it's people ask me whatever they want. If they ask me real crypto questions, I'll answer real crypto questions. But if they ask me lifestyle questions, I'll ask lifestyle questions. It's your AMA, it's not mine. This is another great one. She says, consider about the anyone can succeed. You're significantly smarter than the average person. Says you. I feel pretty dumb at times. If you read Into the Ether or you read The Infinity Machine, I didn't come off as a super smart person. I came off as a raging narcissistic asshole who manipulates reality and hurts people. So, perception is reality sometimes, and sometimes not. So maybe I'm smart, maybe I'm not. Depends on who you ask. There's a very low opinion of me in certain ecosystems. But let's keep reading. There is no way not to do. There's no way you do not know this. Some people do not have the capacity intellectually or the social ability. But what is success, Annabelle? What is success? Let's really ask, is it to be smart? There's plenty of brilliant people who are incredibly unhappy and have lived failed lives, where even if they got a do-over, they'd take it. Look at Alexander Grothendieck, one of the smartest mathematicians, most profound mathematicians of the 20th century. And he made a decision in his mid-40s to exile himself from humanity and live a hermit, miserable and alone, because he disagreed with certain things, and he just got exiled. And the same thing happened to Gregory Perelman. And now they're just out there. So was that a happy life? They're a lot smarter than me, I assure you, much by orders of magnitude. They're gods among men in terms of their ability to understand the things that I struggled to understand. So they didn't be successful. You could be a dullard and be super happy. Let's say you're a groundskeeper, the simple groundskeeper. If the fact that every single day you get to experience beauty and be out in the sun and see the rabbits running around, and people mostly leave you to your own devices, and no one really bothers you too much, and you don't have worries, you don't have massive tax bills to pay. Is that a life that's not successful? Well, because you weren't able to manipulate the environment around you to be able to leave a legacy and achieve some notion of immortality. Success is what you make it. And the greatest wisdom of life is understanding the meaning of your life. This is what Viktor Frankl was talking about, man's search for meaning, the whole field of logotherapy. Find purpose, find meaning. And whatever your situation is, whatever disability you have or ability you have, wherever your intelligence sits on the spectrum, wherever your wealth happens to be. I was friends with Matthew Mellon. He was actually in the cryptocurrency space for a while. His ex-wife started Jimmy Choo. The guy had 16 trusts, 8 from the Drexel family, 8 from the Mellon family. He was a billionaire at birth. A miserable guy, died of a cocaine overdose. We all liked him. He was all cool guy, but you'd always get that feeling like he had an inferiority complex because he stood in the shadow of two legendary families casting down on him, and he could never get to the next level. So he started, it's like a game of Monopoly where you start the game with $2,000 extra, plus you own Boardwalk and Park Place with hotels on it. And he still lost the game. I started from nothing. I lived on $1,000 a month. I now have more money than he ever did. Okay. Does that make me win? No, because that's not the goal. The goal is to live well and be happy. And actually, in many respects, I was happier before I entered the cryptocurrency space than after. Why? Because I didn't have the burdens of an entire ecosystem on my back. I have to wake up every day and make deeply uncomfortable decisions, hard decisions that impact the lives of many people. There are now 7 people that I know of just from pictures who have gotten the tattoo of a product I've created on their body. I can't let those people down. I have to fight hard every day. And in many cases, I have to sacrifice things. I have had, since I started this space, 3 grandparents die. I've missed all of their funerals. Since I started, I've lost a lot of friendships. My reputation in certain respects has been permanently damaged and marred, and I've gone into the realm of a public figure, which means there are people for the rest of their lives who label me a sociopath and think I'm a horrible human being. And there's nothing that can be said to convince them otherwise. The more successful I become and the further the distance becomes between me and normal means that people will start believing I'm part of the lizard people. I'm part of the New World Order. And I'm against the human race. And all these accomplishments are just vanities to justify the fact that I'm actually killing people in Africa or something. Look what they did to Bill Gates. So that's in many ways not success, because it's distanced me from people that otherwise perhaps I could find common ground with and live well with. That's just the truth of the matter. And most people don't vocalize it. They don't talk about it, but it's what it is, what it is. And there's a reason Elon Musk behaves the way he behaves. He was a quite normal person not too long ago. I mean, he was begging people to give him money to start a company to take newspapers and put them online. And when he was driving to those investment meetings, he was driving a BMW that was 10 years too old and the wheel kept falling off. Okay, and now he's this superhuman, godly man who has a giant Twitter account, and when he speaks, millions of people listen. And that's because of the journey that he's been on. And I guarantee you there are moments he wakes up and he at times misses the luxuries of the innocent young days that he had. And that you can't go back. You actually give something up for that. So careful what you wish for. Careful what you mean by success. And careful about the illusions you have about power and wealth and the privileges of society. They're as much prisons as they are freeing factors. And sometimes it's nice just to be. Yes, you got it, Rosebud. This incredible life, and at the end of it, all that really mattered was the sleigh. And there we go. This is the counter. Did you know the struggles and burdens of poverty and hunger and keeping your children fed? Yes, and even in all those things, somehow people who are even far worse than anything you can imagine are happy. This is why Viktor Frankl won the game, because he was at the bottom of that barrel. He got out of a concentration camp. There is nothing human race has ever invented that's worse than that. Every part of his character, his persona, his existence as a human being was systematically stripped from him. His family was systematically killed. His career was permanently destroyed. All of his medical research was ended. His wealth was taken away from him. His land was taken away from him. His health was taken away from him as he entered a fat guy, exited a walking skeleton near death. And he had to do things to survive in that camp that for the rest of his existence would stain his soul and psyche. And despite all those things, he went on to thrive and die happy. What you got? That's not your children. Yeah, but to this point, at least you have children to feed. His are dead. Again, what you got? It's possible. It's possible. The human spirit is indomitable. Human beings are capable of anything. You just have to want it. You just have to desire it. And the very fact that you struggle to feed, this builds something, and it imprints upon the children a work ethic that they wouldn't have otherwise. And society is built in a way that if people are willing to sacrifice in the short term or even in the longer term, eventually they break through. The problem is we get convinced that it's impossible and we start believing it, and then we succumb to the grind. But anyone, anytime, regardless of the country they come from, can find a way to survive and thrive. It might be 10 times harder, and you have to manage your expectations. And no, the vast majority of us won't get to be Bill Gates. But then the question is, should we even aspire to be Bill Gates? If we aspire to live a life of meaning and find a way to survive and thrive, we have the capacity to do that somehow, some way. Does it mean universal comfort? No. Imagine getting it all and then waking up and being diagnosed with cancer. I guarantee you that person would trade it all to be the person struggling to survive and feeding their kids, because at least that person gets to live an extra 30 years or 40 years, and they'd be willing to roll the dice. They could find a way to make it a little bit better. Expand your mind a little bit. Think beyond it. Get the deprogramming out. Get the victim culture out. We're all capable of rising. Hey, Charles, why did you leave ETH? I was fired. They didn't like me. Maybe I had too strong of an opinion about things. Just depends on who you ask. Are you a Freemason? No, I'm philosophically opposed to the organization. You know Jordan Peterson. I know of Jordan Peterson. Haven't met him yet. I hope he's doing well. He had some hard times. Thoughts on Conor McGregor's KO loss? It's all part of a broad scheme for him to make a grand comeback. Dana White's in on it. That's a conspiracy theory for you. Charles, are you a furry? I do have a furry story. If you ever get me drunk, I'll tell it. Oh, you don't get fired from being co-founder. I'm still technically co-founder of Ethereum. I'm fired from the CEO role. But it was a CEO name only. I didn't actually have any power. We were all very young, and there were too many founders. And one of these days, it'll be All Things D 2007, and Robo Walt Mossberg and Vitalik and I will be in a joint interview together, and we'll try to pretend to like each other. He doesn't think very highly of me. He thinks I'm a horrible guy. And that's just sad. Have you read Seneca's Letters from a Stoic? Yeah, him and Marcus Aurelius. They're the two ways to do things, right? Yes, I know a bit of Stoic philosophy, and it's making a comeback, especially in the Valley. Go figure. Would you ever work with David Schwartz? I like David. He's a good guy. I have no problem with him. Sounds like the F team was Lord of the Flies. It's been described by that by more than one person. And again, it just depends on who you ask. We all have our opinions in the matter. And people write books and they create fake characters in their books, and people believe those characters are real. And you just don't care. Just do your own thing. Do you think that Bitcoin's in a bubble? I think fiat's in a bubble. When Africa special? Well, that's up to Africa. We're ready to go. How long till Kamala Harris takes over the presidency because of Joe's dementia? The question is, will she take over officially, or will she just pull a Woodrow Wilson and be basically a proxy president, just like his wife was after he had a stroke towards the end of his term? It's an interesting one, isn't it? Key the Toto music. Do, 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 do. Did they fire Gavin too? Yep. It was like Hunger Games. Biggest guilty pleasure? Chocolate massages. Please tell us about the art on your wall. Okay, that's a painting. That's a painting. That over there is a painting. They take colors on a board, get a brush, they kind of dab it, and they drag it on a canvas, and then eventually it forms some notion of a picture. And if they're pretty, people buy them. So that's pretty, and that's pretty, and that's pretty. People like that stuff. I like it. I thought it was cool. Put it in the office. Can you help me find your baseball? I'm sorry, your dad's never coming back from the cigarettes. You're just going to have to move on. Charles, stop ignoring. Please listen to us. We need better marketing. Nah. What you're really saying is I want the token price to go up so I can sell and buy myself a Lamborghini. Why are we not Doge? We're the vines. The vines do not need to market. They just need to grow. And they need to have a strategy of how they're going to grow. They just grow. And everybody just lets them grow. We slowly but surely walked our way up. And every time we grow, we give no ground. We keep getting stronger. We're an army. We have marketing. We have all these people running around the world that love Ada. They're not going anywhere. They're going to be here 10 years from now. They're going to be here 20 years from now. Their kids are going to be here. Think about it. Marketing is in its own way. Of course, infographics are coming and short TikTok videos are coming and social media campaigns are coming. I fucking finally hired a CMO, for God's sakes. And yeah, we're dialing up the product marketing, and there's a lot to say. But The real marketing is you. That's what made Apple Apple. Never forget that. Ah, ciao, ciao. Come sta? Actually, we're friends. Come stai? Stai? Sti? Non lo so. The I at the end, stai. Come stai? We don't do that. You see E. Come stai? Stai? I. One of these days I'll speak Italian. I promise. I promise. Mi dispiace. You got to have fun with it, or else you go fucking crazy. Hi from Greece. Yasis. What's with your cover photo on Twitter? Yeah, I've told this story before. Look it up. It's in the Charles Archives. It's a bunch of kings. They went to a funeral of a dead English king. Why didn't you and Gavin team up? The sex wasn't any good. Coyotes. Can you speak Chinese? Ni hao. No. Vitalik speaks Chinese. I don't. I was born in Hawaii. Yeah, they'd kick my ass if I was going to learn a language from Asia. It has to be Japanese. I'm sorry. I'd never be able to go back to the old hood again. They'd be like, "What are you doing?" Namaste. Nah. Tell us more about chocolate massages. The best are in Latvia and Riga. Your thoughts on Tim Berners-Lee rebuilding the internet? Every time I've reached out to Tim Berners-Lee and said, "Tim, let's hang out, let's talk," he never gets back to me, ever. And before you say, "Oh, well, who the fuck are you to ask him?" I asked Vince Cerf to come, who literally created the entire internet long before Tim created World Wide Web. And he was willing to come out and talk to me. He was willing to come to my conference and so forth. And so I'd like to do something with Tim. I'd at the very least like him to hang out and chat. He seems like a really cool guy, but I guess he's too big for me. So maybe one day I can grow to a point where we can get the attention of the great Lee. Let's do one more. No, actually, that's not black massages. I'm not using a euphemism or something. When I say chocolate massages, I'm literally talking about actual chocolate with a massage. It's a thing. Look it up. No, it's not Asian. It's actually done by Europeans. It's a big thing. And they do it really well in Latvia. They actually take molten chocolate and pour it all over you. It's a thing. No one believes me. I have a story about Scotland where, you know, I was like, can I get a chocolate massage? And they just hang up on me. They're like, sir, that's disgusting. It's like, no, it's not what you think. It's real chocolate. Yeah, well, that doesn't count because Thailand is like the massage capital, so they do everything. But no, I'm actually not talking about a happy ending. God, guys, there's going to be 100 questions about this. It's a real thing. It's done by a professional massage therapist. There is dignity involved. It just involves chocolate. And yes, it's actual medical grade chocolate. They apparently have a different line of chocolate that's even better. Best math puns. Being tangent to your curves. Yes, the dog is barking. I got to take the dog out. There's coyotes out there, so I need to make sure the dog doesn't get eaten. So I will cut it here in just a moment. Okay, this is where we're going to end it. Thank you all so much. This was a lot of fun. I enjoyed the AMA. 1 o'clock in the morning. I am not going to get any good sleep. What the hell have I done? But it was worth it. Whenever I spend time with my community, it's always worth it. Let's see if there's any good questions to close out the night. Come on, you make me sad. Come on, guys. Nope. All right. Well, fuck it. Good night, everyone. Thank you so much. I hope this was as useful to you as it was fun for me. Cheers.